Alka Joshi, the New York Times best-selling author of The Henna Artist, as well as a popular writer of three other novels, did not know anything about the iconic Indian Hungarian painter Amrita Sher-Gil. As a painter and illustrator, as well as an art historian herself, it was a gnawing gap that she decided to fill with her latest work, 6 Days in Bombay. The protagonist of her novel, Mira, is drawn from Amrita Sher-Gil's extraordinary, albeit short, life as a painter in the Europe and India of the 1930s. Born to an Indian Sikh father and a Hungarian mother in 1913, Sher-Gil died barely at 28 in 1941. That short lifespan was enough for Alka to expand as a novel of, as a blurb describes it, identity and self-discovery that takes readers from Bombay to Prague and Florence, Paris and London to uncover the mystery behind a famous painter's death. She spoke to MCR. Welcome to MCR, Alka. It's always a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
And I believe you are really churning out novels now.
That's what I do.
I'm especially interested in your fictionalized sort of biography of the great painter, Indian Hungarian painter Amrita Sher-Gil. The last time we spoke at a different event, you mentioned that you didn't know anything about Amrita Sher-Gil before you started. You hadn't heard
correct.
of her at all.
That is correct.
Tell me how you got to her to begin with.
Well, I was in New Delhi in 2019, and I went to the National Gallery of Modern Art, where I think it was about 14 of her paintings are displayed, all in this one area. And I was so captivated by her art because I thought, oh, well, this is combining Impressionism with a little bit of Post-Impressionism, some abstract work, some Modigliani, some Gauguin, some Cézanne. What is going on here? And then I looked at the dates that the paintings were done, and it was right around the 1930s. And I thought, okay, now I have studied art history my whole life, and my bachelor's is in art history, and I've never heard of this woman before. Why is that? Is it because she was a woman? So many female artists have been ignored over time. Number two, is it because she was part Indian? Because as we all know, she was Hungarian Indian. Is it because she died too young and she didn't have enough of a body of work to show? Well, that couldn't possibly be true because we know Jean-Michel Basquiat died at a very young age, and yet we all know his name. So I thought, okay, let me explore a little bit further and see if I can find out some more information about her and turn this into a historical fiction, because I'm not a biographer. I am a historical fiction novelist.
So when you approach a subject like that from a historical fiction standpoint, do you draw on her real life, or you're just imagining it on her behalf?
I draw substantially from her real life, from her real personality, and the kinds of things that she wanted to paint or create in art. So those are very much fundamentally in the character of Mira, who is our famous artist in 6 Days in Bombay. And why 6 days? It's because she's in a hospital for the last 6 days of her life. And those are the days in which she becomes very much bonded to the night nurse who is taking care of her. And the night nurse is also becoming bonded to this painter because they both share dual identity, half Indian and half European. And unlike the painter, unlike Amrita, the night nurse has been very sheltered and she is reluctant to pursue a larger life. But Amrita really encouraged me to see that women of any decade have always existed who wanted to live a larger life and did so on their own terms. And so I wanted Mira, the character of Mira in 6 Days in Bombay, to also live that life and to be a bellwether for the night nurse to be able to say, look, you could do this too. There's nothing stopping you. So that is how the story started. And that is where the blending of Amrita's personality and her straightforwardness and really her formidable presence in the art world in the 1930s blended into the personality of Mira, the character in the book.
As we know, Amrita Sher-Gil died very young.
Yes.
Since yours is historical fiction, you had the liberty to extend her life, your character's life, Mira's life. Unfortunately, I haven't read it, but tell me a bit about that. Did you play around with her lifespan at all, or you kept it?
I did. I played around with the lifespan because Amrita Sher-Gil actually died in 1941 at the age of 28. She was complaining of abdominal pain about 2 days before she was about to mount the biggest exhibition of her life in Lahore, which of course was part of India before 1947. And she and her husband were living there. She's really excited about this exhibition, but she waits too long to be seen by a doctor. Her husband takes her to the hospital. In 2 days, she slips into a coma and she is dead. She was vibrant. She was healthy always before this. She never had any issues with her health. So my question was, how in the world did she die? And why was there not a big investigation mounted about this? Her mother always felt that it was her husband, Amrita's husband, who had killed her and so on. So there were lots of theories about how this could have happened. But I thought, okay, why don't I use my historical fiction to try to figure out how Amrita, or Mira in this case, the fictional character, actually died. And what I found is that if I placed my novel in 1941, it was too close to World War II. And I don't want this to be a World War II novel. I don't want either of the world wars to take away from the story of this formidable woman. So I thought, I'm going to place it in 1937, which is far enough away from World War II. And so in 1937, that's when our character of Mira lands in the hospital. And instead of being 28, I made her 29. And the night nurse is actually also 26. So they're very close in age. That's another thing that sort of bonds them together.
You have, your background is art history, so you understand art very well.
Yes.
Did you, in your novel, did you use any visual references to give it a different dimension to your character? Because it is, they live such different lives, artists. So I'm very curious as a writer, somebody who deals in words, suddenly you're confronted with visuals. How did you bridge the gap?
Well, I started off my life as an artist, as a painter, and as an illustrator. So it was something that I did even before I could pick up a pencil. I was always drawing. My parents were very perplexed about where that creativity came from because we don't have any artists in our family. But it was just something I was compelled to do. In fact, I even thought when I was in high school that I may end up becoming an artist as a career. But then I realized how hard it is for artists to actually make money off of their art. And I thought, well, I need something that I can actually pay my bills with. So I did not go into that, but I have a visceral understanding, let's say a tactile understanding of what it is to paint, what it is to see a life-size figure in front of you and to actually recreate that on a canvas. I know what it is to blend different kinds of paints and come out with colors that you hadn't expected. And I know what it is to create something, to have this compulsion to create that no one can take away from you. You are just want to do this thing. And there is no use for anyone trying to stop you from doing it. Amrita, in her time frame in the 1930s, wanted to paint nudes, as she was good at it and she liked doing it, both male and female nudes. But for some reason in that time period, it wasn't okay for women to be painting nudes, although for centuries men had been painting nudes. It was perfectly okay. So of course, this was a gender bias that she did not comply with. She wanted to do it and she was going to do it. And she did. So I love this about her. I love this attitude that, just because I'm a woman does not mean that you can stop me from doing this. And I think in my own corporate life, I always felt that way too. Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that you can pay me less. Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that you can't promote me. Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that you can talk to me in this disrespectful way.
How would you describe Mira's style of painting? Amrita Sher-Gil was somewhat genre fluid, if I can use that term.
Yes.
Is Mira genre fluid too?
Absolutely. And I used 4 of Amrita's paintings, actually describe them in the book. And these are 4 paintings that Mira, the character, bequeaths to the nurse upon her death. So the nurse is chartered with making sure that these paintings are delivered to the ex-lovers and ex-friends of the painter. Now, that is also something I'm borrowing from Amrita's biographies. Amrita was very sexually fluid as well. She slept with both men and women, and she left behind this wasteland of people whom she had betrayed, people she had left behind, people she had used. And so Mira has left a similar wasteland, and our nurse Sona is going to have to navigate through that wasteland to really find out who this woman was. And I think part of what was happening as I did the research on Amrita is that I kept finding these little pieces of her that are not commonly spoken about. And this was the narcissistic version of Amrita. This is the part of her that maybe we won't admire quite as much. This was the part where, yes, she did use people to get where she wanted to go, or she used people because they were there at the time, they were available. So I wanted to get that across from the fictional character also, and the nurse is going to find out more about these things as she delivers these paintings. The 4 paintings that I used have a very similar, or 3 of them actually have a very similar style. And that the paintings are the Brahmacharis, Bride's Toilet, and 3 Girls. And they use a little bit of Impressionism and a sort of, Modigliani-esque figures, which are very elongated bodies, elongated arms and legs. And the 4th one actually doesn't fit this mold. It's more of a Cézanne, and that is boy with 3 apples, or man with 3 apples. And that I liked because that was a lover of hers, or ex-lover of Amrita's, and she often portrayed him in her paintings. And I just found it really appealing. So those are the 4 paintings I picked out that this nurse is going to get a hold of and, be able to deliver them all throughout Europe. I loved all of those paintings. Like, I chose the paintings that I loved the best.
I see. Just as an aside, it's interesting you should mention Modigliani. There's a lovely painting by Amrita Sher-Gil of her, I think, first cousin. You may have seen it. It's pretty famous. There's a very slender woman with long neck. When I saw it, it struck me precisely that this is like Modigliani. It's elongated. It's not consciously elongated, but you can make out that there is that influence.
Yes.
It's interesting that you should mention that.
Yes, when she was at the École des Beaux-Arts, she started at the age of 16, 17, and she was very much influenced by, of course, all of the instructors' influences, and some of those were Modigliani, Cézanne, Gauguin, Picasso, Matisse is really big at this time. So she decided to just blend a lot of different styles together. And I think that's where her genius lies. She's not trying to imitate any one painter. She is really blending styles in her own way.
Yes. Since you mentioned the name Mira, it so happens that Mira Nair is making a sort of a biopic of Amrita Sher-Gil. Have you had any contact at all with her on this, or no?
I have not. I have tried to contact her, but I don't actually have a contact for Mira Nair. But I've just gone through her Instagram to, try to direct message her. And I am so excited. Yes, her film is called, I think it's called Amir.
I know I wrote about it. It escapes me now, but
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
An Amri, that's what it's called.
Amrit, AMRI.
And
Yeah, right.
yeah, and I'm really excited that that's happening, because if we have a whole confluence of information coming out about Amrita Sher-Gil, we should all globally be able to remember who she was and say her name in the same breath that we say Frida Kahlo, in the same breath that we
Absolutely.
say Georgia O'Keeffe or
Right.
Mary Cassatt. She
Yeah.
belongs in that canon.
Absolutely. I'm glad. I was about to say Frida Kahlo. Unfortunately, her short lifespan had an impact on the output. I don't know how much she created in terms of number. I don't think her body of work is that large.
What I read was that she created about 150 to 160 paintings in her lifetime.
Yeah.
And except for the ones that are being displayed at the National Gallery of Modern Art in Delhi, the rest of them are supposedly in private collections, which is why we don't see them all around the world.
Right.
And once the Indian government declared her paintings a national treasure, it is very difficult to get them out of the country to be shown in a global exhibition.
We spoke of her sort of fluidity, sexual fluidity. Does your character have similar traits?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
Tell me a
Mira
bit more
is.
about that.
Yes, and what the nurse notices is that Mira is not at all shy about being flirtatious with the doctor who is tending to her in front of Mira's husband. And, Mira's husband is standing right there, and Mira loves to flirt. She loves to have the attention of the male gaze as well as the female gaze. She is, I think, once again, narcissistic in the sense that she feels that what she does doesn't necessarily affect anyone else around her, or she's just not aware of it and doesn't really care. So yes, and her charm works on everybody, and I think that in real life, Amrita was also an extremely charming character, and really, drew people to her in the way that Mira, the character, does as well.
Given your background as a painter and an illustrator, how do you bring that view into your writing? Because one is entirely visual, the other is lexical, vocal, it's verbal. Did you marry the two at all?
Well, in my mind, I think of myself as a creative person. And so all of these different arts blend together. There is no differentiation in my brain between the different arts. It's just a way to create. It's just a way for the brain to say, okay, how do I communicate this? What is the best medium for me to communicate this particular theme or this particular person's life that I want to, put forth? So, it's seamless for me. And all those years that I spent in advertising and marketing, I was always combining the visual with the verbal. I always had to write the copy and figure out what the visual was going to be as well. So
Right.
I think my brain is just configured to do both of those simultaneously. And if you'll notice, Mayank, all of my books always focus on art, because
I
that is
see
just
that,
a
yes.
big part of my life. It's a big part of who I am, and I love all kinds of different art. So we have the art of perfume making in The Perfumist of Paris. We have the art of gold production and jewelry making in The Secret Keeper of Jaipur, the art of henna in The Henna Artist.
Right.
And then in 6 Days in Bombay, it's this painting that Amrita Sher-Gil was doing.
You mentioned early on that you're already on to your sixth book now. The fifth is already written, sixth is
Yes.
underway. Tell me a bit about both.
It's so funny that, when I was writing this trilogy, I never actually thought, okay, I'm just going to stop at this trilogy. I just thought, okay, I've written about these three characters. I really wanted to go on and write about Amrita Sher-Gil. And so I started calling these a trilogy. It's just easier to refer to these three books as a trilogy, and they have all the same characters. Well, my editor said, stop calling it a trilogy because that means it's over. And I thought, well, no, that can't be true because look at Star Wars. You know, Star Wars has X number of prequels and X number of sequels. It doesn't matter. So with the sixth book, I do want to return to these characters, and we are going back to them. We have advanced the time period to 1980. And that was a seminal moment in all of the migration that happened between India. That was sort of the first big movement between India and America. So we had the high-tech, the first sort of petroleum oil and high-tech boom happening around the 1980s. And then there was another one in the 1990s and so on. So I like that time period and talking about that time period. And I'll have a chance to bring these characters from India to America and then back again. And I also love to play with this idea of how large the Indian diaspora is around the world and in how many places we have contributed to the society that we choose to adopt. And I think that for me, it's very interesting for me to have my characters traveling through Europe, through the Americas, through all over India. And, you know, to be able to show people, look, you know, Indians are far more diverse than you might think, and that we are capable in so many different ways and contributing in so many different ways to different societies that we live in. And for me, it's just fun. You know, it is fun to climb back into these worlds in the past. And it's fun to also do all of the research. For 6 days in Bombay, I had to go to Mumbai, Delhi, Istanbul, Prague, Florence, Paris, London. And I met with experts in all of those areas so that I could learn what life was like in a certain time period. So I met with art historians and, you know, just historical experts. And I met with a photo archivist who could show me what people were wearing, what foods they were eating at that time period. They would walk me around as I went to each of these cities so that I could imagine where my character is walking. Because so many of these places in Europe that did not get bombed during World War II are still looking exactly the same as they did before. So it's really beautiful to be able to capture what they might have felt like and looked like at that time period. I think that for me, a lot of the joy comes from meeting all of the people who are going to help me shape that story.
Right. And to wrap it up, what happened to the one that was optioned for a movie? The novel
so that is still in development, and that's the Henna Artist.
Yeah, right behind you, yes.
Exactly. And Frida Pinto will star as Lakshmi. And, you know, I thought the process of development went really quickly. This is how naive I was when it was first optioned. And I thought, oh, within a few years, we're going to see a series or a movie. But apparently it takes about 7 years for the average screen adaptation to be realized on the big or little screen. Yeah. So I think next year we'll be approaching maybe the 7-year mark.
I see. I think sometimes they just take too long. I think they make far too much out of these things, make heavy weather out of things which they shouldn't. I don't think it should take 7 years to turn a book into a movie at all, unless you're not that focused.
Yeah, I think that Bollywood would not take that long, but Hollywood somehow has a lot of hoops that you have to jump through.
AI will change that. AI will kick their behind, and that I think because AI, you can literally make now an entire feature film in about 5 hours. Everything.
I know, and I think Hollywood jobs are going away as a result of that.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. On that note, Alka, I really want to thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure to engage with you, and my best to you on your continuing writing.
Thank you so much. And let me know when this airs. I would be delighted to
I certainly
watch it
will.
again and share it on my social media.